Hello there, and welcome back to Writing from Scratch with me, Tom. Today we're discussing two different writing methods, architects and gardeners. So at this point in my writing journey, I've reached my first major junction, to start writing or to start planning. Many writers fall into one of the two categories, architects or gardeners. But it's important to note that really nobody is a pure architect or a pure gardener, and that most people tend to be a mixture of both and lean one way or the other. To illustrate what these 2 points mean, I'm going to be using the fantasy writers J.R.R. Tolkien and George R.R. Martin, both of whom are titans of their genre, but approach their writing in very different ways. Our architect for today is J.R.R. Tolkien, author of the Lord of the Rings series. An architect is typically characterized as somebody who likes to plan everything before they start writing. They like to look at languages and cultures and characteristics, and they like to have all the story elements and the plot points mapped out before they even start. Let's listen to Tolkien explain a little bit more about this himself.
And you took 14 years to make this story?
Quite so, yes.
And this was a story in...
But that is partly out of the fact that I'm a meticulous sort of bloke. And that I took 14 years, not for the general things it is now, but finding time schemes and getting everything right and so on.
Well, for instance,
yes.
This whole matter of the appendices, 100 pages, language, social customs, history. Normally, if you had been writing a history as a historian, all these would have existed on a card index before you ever began to write.
Yeah.
Is this true for the
Very
Lord of
much
the Rings?
so, yes. One thing that, for instance, in the remarks you made at the beginning was the fact that time passed and the hobbits grew into this world.
Yes.
Matter of fact, what really happened was that because having already constructed the world, they became drawn into it.
So that you had literally invented the world before you even wrote The Hobbit?
Oh yes, indeed.
Now, I'm not saying you need to be like Tolkien. 14 years of planning is a bit of an exception. But it is clear and evident from the video that Tolkien really enjoyed planning and making his world before he put pen to paper. Most architects would argue that this structure is simpler and easier to follow. You have your idea, you start planning, and then you execute. Essentially, you can have more confidence in your writing because you're just reading from a script and filling in the blanks. That isn't to say that there isn't flexibility here. Tolkien is famous for saying that the tale grew in the telling. So remember that we're only talking about leaning to one side or the other, and that there still needs to be that room to help the story grow organically too. George R.R. Martin is our gardener. This kind of writer tends to take an idea, plant it in the ground, and then just let it grow naturally, without structuring it or planning too much. They tend to start with a simple idea and then try and pursue that organically. Let's listen to what George has to say about this style of writing.
I think it'd be fair to say, based on what you just said, that you don't write to a plan. The writing more just, grabs you and you just sort of chase it.
Yes and no. I mean, I do know where I'm going. I know where the story ends. I know the fate of the principal characters. No, I'm not going to tell any of you. But there is a considerable amount that you discover in the process of writing. That's the fun of writing, actually. The gardener digs a hole and throws in a seed and sort of waters it with his blood and hopes that something interesting comes out. Now, mind you, the gardener knows certain things. The gardener knows whether he planted a potato or a geranium, but and it would be very surprising if you plant a potato and a geranium comes up. But a lot is discovered in the process. I think all writers are some combination of these two, but they tend, according to your personality, to one side or another, and I'm much more on the gardener's side.
Again, George's clip illustrates that we're talking about leaning. We're not talking about pure gardeners or pure architects. We're talking about moving to one side more than the other. It's clear from George's clip that he enjoys the flexibility of being a gardener, of allowing things to grow organically, and he gets a lot of pleasure from seeing his story evolve naturally. Many writers enjoy this style too because it allows for maximum flexibility. You're allowing a lot of things to be left up to chance, which can be really exciting both for the reader and for the author. But again, there are still elements of planning involved. Just like with a garden, you still map out your garden before you plant your trees. Really, this all just comes down to personal preference on what you think is a better style for you. For me, I prefer the architect style. I like the idea of planning and structuring my story and my plot elements in my world before I start writing, but again, really it's your choice. My advice is to experiment. Try a little bit of planning and see if you get impatient and want to just start writing. Or maybe just start writing and find that you don't really want to continue without knowing what the rest of the story is going to be. Play with it. Find the style that works best for you. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching. This episode is a little bit special because from next week I'm going to be alternating episodes between architect episodes and gardener episodes, focusing on story planning and on writing. So make sure that you're tuning into all of those to help you discover your own style as I release them. Please consider subscribing, liking and sharing the video with your friends, and I'll see you all next time. Thank you very much.